She walked into the room quietly, holding nothing but a small purse and a big dream. No fancy makeup, no expensive outfit, just a simple woman with a kind face and gentle eyes. The other contestants barely noticed her as she took a seat in the back, waiting for her turn. In a world where appearances often speak louder than words, she didn't seem like someone who belonged on a casting stage. And soon the judges confirmed that thought. It only took a few moments for them to dismiss her. With barely a glance, they waved her off, uninterested and impatient. One of them even whispered under his breath, "She doesn't have it asterisk." The room chuckled softly, assuming the moment was over. But then, just as she was about to leave, she paused, turned around, and said one sentence, just one. And that's when everything changed. The laughter stopped. The room went silent. The judges' eyes widened. No one expected that asterisk from her. In a matter of seconds, the woman they had all overlooked became the center of attention. Something in her words hit deep, so honest, so raw, so powerful that it completely shifted the atmosphere in the room. Who was this woman, really? And what did she say that left even the most seasoned casting directors at a loss for words? You're about to hear a story that proves you should never judge someone by their appearance. A story that reminds us how one voice, even the quietest one, can carry the most strength when spoken from the heart. Stay with us to find out what she said, and how those few words changed not only her fate, but left a mark on everyone in that room. This is a moment you won't forget. Her name was Maria, a mother of two, a part-time cashier at a corner store, and someone who had never stepped foot in a casting room before that day. She wasn't chasing fame or fortune, at least not the way most others were. She had come not to be seen, but to be heard. For her, this audition was more than just a chance at a role. It was her only shot to be something more than what life had always told her she could be. Maria had spent years living quietly, working long shifts, sacrificing dreams for bills, and always putting others before herself. Her friends told her it was too late. Her neighbors laughed when she said she was going to try out for a role in a national TV series. But deep down, she knew this was something she had to do, not for them, not even for her kids, but for the little part of herself she'd been ignoring for years. The casting room was cold, both in temperature and in energy. People came in full of confidence, some even arrogant, throwing around rehearsed lines and forced charisma. Maria, in her plain clothes and calm voice, didn't fit the mold, and that's exactly why the judges dismissed her so quickly. But what they didn't know, what no one knew, was the life she had lived before this, the pain she had carried, the strength it took just to walk into that room. Her words didn't come from a script, they came from a place of truth that few ever dared to speak from. So, when she turned around and spoke that one sentence, it wasn't just words. It was years of silence, struggle, and quiet courage all rising at once. But what did she say that stopped everyone in their tracks? The sentence she spoke was simple, but the weight behind it was undeniable. Asterisk. I've lived the story you're trying to tell. Asterisk. At first, the room froze. Then slowly, all eyes turned back to her. The casting director, who had already looked down at his clipboard, raised his head. The assistants stopped typing. Even the other contestants, once busy rehearsing their lines, were now completely silent. They didn't know what Maria meant exactly, but they felt it, and it shook something in all of them. The show they were casting for was a gritty family drama, centered around a woman struggling to survive after losing everything. They were looking for someone with depth, emotion, realism, but in their rush for perfection, they overlooked the one person who didn't need to pretend. Maria didn't have to imagine the pain. She had lived it. Behind her calm eyes was a woman who had been through eviction, heartbreak, illness, and still managed to smile for her kids every morning. She had survived real loss, not the kind written in a script, but the kind that makes you question everything, the kind that leaves a mark. But Maria's story wasn't just about pain, it was about persistence. about what it takes to keep showing up in a world that doesn't always see you. The judges didn't know that. Not yet. One of the judges finally asked, "What do you mean by that?" But Maria just stood there, steady. She wasn't performing. She wasn't begging. She was finally owning her truth. And while most of the room watched in silence, one of the younger assistants looked visibly emotional. Maybe she saw something of herself in Maria. Maybe she understood. But just as Maria was about to speak again, something unexpected happened. Someone else in the room stood up. And that's when things really began to shift. The room felt electric now, like the air had been charged with something no one expected. Maria's quiet strength had unsettled the usual rhythm of the casting process. The judges exchanged glances, their confident facade cracking just a little. They weren't used to being challenged, especially not by someone they'd just dismissed as invisible. The young assistant who had looked so moved earlier suddenly stood up, her voice trembling but clear. "Wait," she said, "I think we need to hear more from her." The words seemed small, but they carried weight. It was a rare moment when someone dared to speak up against the unspoken rules of this world, rules that told them to judge based on looks, polish, and rehearsed charm. The lead casting director frowned, his patience thinning. "This isn't a charity," he said sharply. "We're here to find the right actor, not to listen to life stories." But Maria remained calm. Her eyes met his, steady and unshaken. "I'm not here for charity," she said softly. "I'm here because I can tell the story you want to tell. Because I *am* that story." The room fell silent again. This time, no one moved. No one whispered. The tension was almost unbearable. Everyone was waiting. For what? No one quite knew. Would the judges finally give her a chance? Would Maria's honesty be enough to break through the layers of expectation and prejudice? Outside the room, the clock ticked loudly. Inside, time seemed to slow. Maria's heart pounded, but she didn't back down. She knew this was her moment, whether it ended in rejection or something more. And then, just when it seemed the silence might stretch forever, the lead judge leaned forward, his voice low, but charged with curiosity. "Tell us everything." Maria took a slow breath, feeling every eye on her, the weight of the moment heavier than she'd ever imagined. She began to speak, not rehearsed lines, not a polished monologue, but a piece of her soul. She told them about the long nights working 2 jobs just to keep food on the table, about the moments when hope felt like a distant dream, about the loss that left her feeling invisible in a world that only noticed the perfect and the polished. But just as the room leaned in, ready to embrace the raw truth she shared, the door suddenly opened. A man stepped inside, someone no one expected. It was the show's producer, known for being strict and demanding, someone who rarely spoke in casting sessions. His face was stern, but his eyes flickered with something urgent. "I'm sorry to interrupt," he said, voice cutting through the tension, "but I need to know how much of this is real and how much is just a story." His words weren't accusatory, but challenged the very heart of what Maria had just revealed. The judges exchanged uneasy looks. Doubt crept back into the room, threatening to undo the fragile connection Maria had just built. Was her story truly her own? Or was it a well-crafted tale designed to sway them? Maria's breath caught, but she stood firm. Before she could respond, another voice entered the room, one of the other contestants, a young woman who had been watching quietly from the side. She stepped forward, eyes sharp and unwavering. "I know Maria," she said quietly, "and everything she said is true." The room held its breath. The stakes had just been raised. Trust, truth, and talent now hung in a delicate balance, and the next moments would decide it all. The room was charged with tension as Maria met the eyes of the young woman who had just defended her. The producer's gaze shifted between them, his skepticism slowly softening. The young contestant, a girl named Elena, shared a quiet but powerful testimony about Maria's struggles, how she'd seen her rise from hardship with unwavering strength, how Maria had inspired those around her, even in the darkest moments. Suddenly, The doubts that had threatened to unravel everything began to dissolve. The judges exchanged nods, their earlier judgments melting into respect. The casting director finally spoke, his voice quieter than before. "Maria, we asked for honesty, and you gave us the real story. That's what this role needs, the truth, not just an act." Maria's heart pounded. For the first time, she felt truly seen, not for what she wore or how polished her performance was, but for who she was. The room, once cold and dismissive, now felt warmer, full of possibility. Just when it seemed her moment had arrived, the producer's phone buzzed. He glanced down, and his face shifted again, this time with surprise. "There's been a change in the script," he announced. "They want to add a new character, someone authentic, someone with real experience to bring depth." All eyes turned to Maria. "You don't have to audition again," he continued. "We want you for this role, because your story asterisk is asterisk the story." The room erupted in quiet applause. Tears welled up in Maria's eyes, but before she could fully breathe in the moment, the producer added one last thing, almost as an afterthought. "But there's one condition." Maria's heart stopped. "What is it?" He smiled slightly. "You have to promise to help the others here, those who still struggle with their own stories, just like you once did." Maria nodded, realizing this wasn't just about her anymore. It was about something bigger, a chance to change a world that often ignored the simple, honest voices. And with that, her journey had only just begun. Maria stood there, the weight of the producer's words settling around her like a warm blanket. Helping others, giving back to those who still felt invisible, was something she hadn't expected, but it made sense. She knew what it was like to be overlooked, dismissed, and underestimated. Now, she had a chance to be the voice not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been told they didn't belong. The other contestants, once competitors, now looked at her with newfound respect. Some even approached quietly, sharing their own stories of fear, hope, and dreams waiting to be unlocked. Maria listened with an open heart, understanding that this journey was bigger than just a single role or a single person. As days turned into weeks, Maria found herself not only preparing for her role, but also mentoring others, encouraging them to find strength in their truth. The casting room that had once felt cold and unforgiving became a place of connection and honesty. And in sharing her story, Maria realized something powerful. Sometimes, the simplest voice is the one that changes everything. Her experience became a reminder that talent isn't about perfect looks or polished lines. It's about authenticity and courage. For anyone watching her journey, the message was clear. Never let others decide your worth, and never be afraid to speak your truth. Maria's story left everyone in that room, and everyone watching, speechless, not because of dramatic stunts or flashy performances, but because of the raw honesty she brought to the stage. It was a simple woman's voice that changed the narrative, proving that sometimes one sentence can break down walls and build bridges. And that's the story behind the moment no one expected, the moment that reminded us all why real stories matter.